Sure, and great. It's great meeting you, Meg, and I'm very excited to be here with you. So my journey, I am currently the Chief People Officer at Dynatrace, and I started off actually in a career in finance very many years ago, and then transitioned over to human capital, and that's been my focus and passion for the past 20 some years. So it's been wonderful, and I think that for me, diversity is really about just inclusion and a sense of belonging, and for everyone just to feel that they can bring their true self to work every day, bring their voice, have it heard, have it be valued, and it's been a wonderful journey, and I love doing this.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, let's talk a little bit kind of more into the nitty-gritty about this. When you're talking about a truly people-centered working environment, what does that mean to you? Can you give us a picture or kind of a definition of what you're talking about in that, in that very complex idea?
So people centered is essentially that environment or that ecosystem where everyone can show up as their true self. They have the ability to thrive. They have the ability to grow. There's a career, there's a journey, there's a path forward with them within an organization. And for those organizations that can create that ecosystem, they're going to retain their great talent. They're going to attract great talent. And so when it's people centered and centric, it really is about the individual and how does that individual align and really grow with the organization.
So, as we're talking about this concept, how do you think that this impacts work at Dynatrace? Why do you think it's so important for y'all's success?
Well, when you feel connected to an organization, when you truly can bring your thoughts and your ideas and be able to have dialogue around it, and not everyone's going to agree with you, but when you can truly have that debate and dialogue, you're fostering innovation. And we're all about innovation. Our products, our technology, it's how do we continue to innovate? How do we continue to provide the best solution for our customers? And you're not going to be able to do that unless you have that environment where individuals can truly speak up, speak their minds, have their ideas heard and really debated about. And you really don't do that when you don't feel connected and you don't feel like you have that environment to have those conversations.
And I think that's a really good point to make, right? Because I feel like a lot of times when we have these conversations, it's with people who luckily have never felt like this, right? They've never been made to feel the only or, like the first in the room. And so it can be kind of a difficult thing, especially if people have not, like, if somebody doesn't have an experience that they can tie in with that, they just don't understand. So I really appreciate that, it is something that's baked in because, people that know get it, right? People that have been affected in this way, it's kind of like you can't go back after that. You see things a little differently. And I think it's really important that we continue to make this a conversation because, even the people that don't feel that way or have never been made to feel that way, you still need to be aware that this is something that is going to be in people's minds. I love this.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you think that there's been how do I put this? Do you think that there has been a marked impact in one area of the company because of this? Like, do you think that the success is really typified in one area? Or do you just see it as an overall, like the company culture is more welcoming to people?
Well, the company culture is definitely welcoming to people. And it's interesting, we found that out. So when I joined the organization, we really had we didn't have a consistent employee experience. And we're on that journey to really build that robust employee experience. And no matter where someone comes into the organization, they feel like it's Dynatrace. And so we did a large body of work really discovering, okay, what are those key attributes of Dynatrace? And welcoming was one of the consistent key attributes that came across from our culture globally. And that was really cool because right now, we are consistently inconsistent in our employee experience. And that's, it's by nature of how we grew up as an organization. And now we're at that next phase where we're continuing to grow, and it's easier to do business with the organization when you have consistency. But welcoming was absolutely one of the top attributes that came out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's first impressions are kind of like glass, right? Once they're made, that you kind of get it. Like once you've broken that glass, there's no going back. And so I really love that the welcoming aspect of it is so important, because if this is the first kind of experience that somebody gets with your company, you want that experience to be positive, right? Like they're being onboarded, they're coming into this new org. You want them to not only see you with your best foot forward, but like you want to make sure that you are encouraging that and extending that to everyone, not just people that have been in the trenches, people that have worked there for a while. You want everyone to feel this. Very, very appreciative. Now, when you're trying to build this kind of people-centered working environment, what are some of the challenges that you came across?
So one of the challenges was the fact that we were consistently inconsistent in our employee experience. And so we're on this journey to really look at how do we go about, as a one company mindset, thinking and acting globally, but supporting local, because we are very geographically dispersed. We have employees in, many, many different countries. And so when you think about diversity and inclusion, it's really, how do we get the best minds and the best thoughts? And so part of this journey is really defining, okay, what is our, what's our employer brand? So, coming up with that and being able to articulate the proposition of what kind of relationship can an employee or an individual experience with the organization. So being able to define that, but we've been putting in different programs. So we have we're a hybrid organization. So we're globally distributed. We're a hybrid organization. We have a significant number of individuals that are fully remote. So when you talk about welcoming, how do you feel welcomed when you're a full-time remote employee? I'm a full-time remote employee. And so, how do you really connect with the organization? So we have a remote connect club. We're doing a remote holiday party. We have a lot of different programs that are, really engaging and connecting individuals globally through Slack channels and communities. So it's really building that sense of community across the organization. We have employee resource groups. So there's many different avenues. We actually put in a global newsletter that really connects everyone and just really highlights anniversaries and people joining the organization. And, these are small things, but the more we also established a monthly celebration that globally we celebrate, Wellness Month, or we celebrate Mentoring Month and things like that. And, it just brings people together when we're not sitting next to each other each day.
So as somebody who has worked both as, I currently work freelance. Before that, I was full-time with Power to Fly. Before that, I was in office. And so making that move, especially in 2019, right? So absent the shift of the pandemic and all of the stuff that went with that, it's a completely different vibe, right? It was completely different moving from in office to outside. And so especially moving companies, like, that was my deal. But you're right, being welcomed, especially when you're in a remote capacity, is huge, because it's really easy to feel like, well, yeah, I'm doing this work, but I'm kind of also completely by myself. Yep. So I think that's wonderful. And I like how, it's something that you think about on all levels, because you're not gonna be able to do the exact same thing for everybody, right? You can't throw an in-person holiday party for people that are remote and all over the world. So I like that, when we're talking about these kinds of things, it kind of highlights the E of DEIB, right? We're talking about equity and making sure that people are not being treated the same, but they are being treated equitably, that we're trying to, make sure that people have the option to be included. Were there any specific challenges there that you really, that you're really proud of the way you worked around that?
Well, I think the main challenge, or one of the main challenges when I came into the organization, was people they associated with their function and not with the company, or they associated with their region, but not with the company. And so through really discovering what are those key attributes around why people come to work for Dynatrace or why people stay at Dynatrace, we came up with our employer brand of real vibes, real people. You said the word vibe before, and that resonated globally. And so, first is that overarching, like, here's what we're all about, right? There's real vibes and there's real people here. And really being able to then take that and build it into programs that really connect individuals. So it's all about how do we articulate our employee experience, and then how do we, throughout anyone's life cycle within the organization, they feel that through how we hire, onboard, develop, promote, all of that. And so, that was one area that we really focused on in the beginning, and we're able to roll that out.
Very cool. All right. All right, let's talk about how you ensure that people feel heard and valued. Are there, surveys that go into this? How do you judge this? In what ways do you, give people the avenues to make sure that there are mechanisms involved? They can actually feel heard. Tell me what this looks like.
So it's multifaceted, right? So it's interesting because we have a number of avenues. We enable individuals to ask anonymous questions to the organization that we then respond to and share out with the organization. So, a lot of times feedback is associated with an individual, and you can put your name associated with it, but sometimes those more difficult questions or someone doesn't want to. So we allow, we take all of our questions very seriously. We also are in the process of going out and doing an employee engagement survey for the first time for the organization. So that's going out in January, and we'll start to hear more there. We, so multiple different surveys that we do from our new hires, from our hiring managers, so we also have anonymous just pulses that happen across the organization. So a lot of different avenues that we're hearing individuals. At all of our all-team calls that we do on a quarterly basis, we have the ability for people to put in questions through Slido. So there's a lot of give and take of information flow.
I love that. And, it really does kind of illustrate that it's similar to when you're trying to offer support, right? If you're trying to ask for feedback, you can't necessarily ask the same question 1,000 times, right? You need to ask different questions. You need to figure out how you're asking the questions. It's kind of like survey 101. But you do also need to give people different options on how to deliver that feedback. And then the third part of it that is huge, that I feel like is where the disconnect happens a lot of time, is acting on that feedback, responding to it, addressing it, even if it's something that you can't really do anything about. Like, you really, it's, people want to be heard, but it's not that they want to scream into the void. They want to know that someone's listening. Do you think there are any key initiatives that really support this commitment to fostering belonging?
Key initiatives. Well, there's many. So I have to think about these key ones. I think it's it's multifaceted. So starting off with listening sessions and really hearing how people are perceiving the work, areas that they'd like to see improvement in. So part is the listening. The second part is the action part, which you spoke of, right? And, really committing to say, we heard this and this is what we're putting in place. So, we're on a journey transforming the whole function and the whole employee experience. So one big aspect is involving the business and our employee base in, as we roll out new programs, to have them help design and help test. So it is multifaceted. And when you're going through a large transformation, you want to make sure that it's not being done to someone, but they have a voice in how it's going to be rolled out. So we're actively engaged in that right now. And we also have something called a Sparks Network, which is a change champion network that really will help people adopt some of the new programs that we've put in place.
Excellent. And I really love the extra layer there of like, okay, here's ways you can do this, right? It's not just here's some things to change. It's like, no, here's how you could do this more effectively, or, I like that extra support. That's great. Okay, let's take a step back from, current employees, and let's talk about the hiring process. What do you think are some of the best practices that y'all follow for inclusive hiring to ensure that people that, you know, kind of everyone gets that consideration. They get that kind of equal shake at the job.
So we are an equal opportunity employer, and full stop. We look for the best talent to bring into the organization, but we also do cultivate different talent communities globally, so that we're ensuring that our opportunities are being showcased, you know, across the different populations that we're looking to attract. And so we have a relationship with Power to Fly. We have a relationship with Sisters in Sales and with Grace Hopper. And so we're expanding out and making sure that our message is being heard. But then we're also building communities and engaging in those communities. So maybe there's not a position today, but we want to ensure that when a position opens up, that you are the first to know. And then through a hiring process, you know, all of our recruiters go through training to make sure that when we have unbiased hiring, and that we want to make, again, focus on the skill sets and the role in the individual, and make sure that there's alignment and a match. And so we really do focus on that. We're also training our hiring managers. And you know, it's when you, even the simplest things. So we track everything, right? So we're always looking at what's the candidate flow. So if we're looking to increase our gender representation, we're looking at how many female candidates are coming into the organization, how many are being converted to hires, and understanding just where that sits, and if there's a misalignment, why. So part of it is you have to measure it to understand it, and then when you see there is something, if there is something that's not in sync, you question the why. And so just knowing that and looking at that and really digging in deep into the why of it, and even by a function or a role, just helps you have better dialogue and questions to make sure you are making the right hiring decision.
Yeah, of course. Because I mean, you know, there's a ton of time and personnel and money that goes into this. So you want it to be, you know, a successful and you know, mutually beneficial process. When you are talking, you know, obviously we talked about, you know, ways that the hiring teams themselves are coached and trained to make sure that these, you know, as much as we can, internal and implicit biases are you know, eliminated from the situation. You know, is there, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, my question just went out of my head. Oh, does this also apply to things like the job descriptions, like, you know, how they're worded or the kinds of qualifications that you're looking for?
Absolutely. And so while we're going through this transformation of the people and culture team, we are looking at putting in place a whole new career framework and job architecture. And that really focuses on the roles and responsibilities. And it is, we make sure that we screen all of our job descriptions to make sure that they are gender neutral, right? And so making sure that, you know, we aren't putting in any kind of language that would have a candidate look at it and say, hey, I don't want to apply there. I don't, you know, so we're looking at all that as well, putting in gender neutral job descriptions.
I like that. I think that's really great. It's one of those things that we talk a lot with these companies, especially early on, maybe in their Power to Fly journey, because it's really easy to get kind of, I don't want to say lulled into complacency, but certain things become shorthand, right? And you say like, okay, well, this is the job I have, so I need to have somebody that has this experience. And it's like, well, do you actually, like, do you actually need somebody that has all of these qualifications, or are you shorthanding because you think that that qualification is the only way you're going to get this laundry list of things? And so I think it is really important that, you know, we think about these things, because, you know, just as much as it is important to really have these policies that actually support, you know, equality and belonging in the workplace, you know, you also do want to make sure that they're actually serving the people that you're trying to reach. Okay, let's talk about some areas where y'all have applied diversity and inclusion principles, but people might not typically associate that with a function of DEIB in the workplace.
So I think where, you know, I have to think about this, principles. I mean, because we are such a, you know, an organization that's really looking for the best thinking and the best minds, right? We want to make sure that all of our employees are they take diversity training just to make sure that they're all aware. When you think about part of this is when I talked about the career framework and job architecture that we're putting in place, each one of those roles, so everyone is mapped to a role. That role has a career profile, so it speaks to how an individual can progress within their roles. And this is the fundamentals, the background of, that growth and opportunity within the organization. We want to make sure that we support our employee referrals, our internal mobility. So we're always looking at that as well. We're looking at our promotion rates. So I think maybe that's behind the scenes because we're looking at it, we're monitoring it, making sure that people are progressing and growing, but maybe we're less saying we're not publishing it out to the organization, right? And so, there are these principles of growth and opportunity for all. And how do you establish that framework of that growth and opportunity through career profiles, through internal mobility, through looking at how people promote learning and development, our leadership programs. So we're always looking at how do we continue that growth trajectory of an individual, because as the organization grows, you want your individuals to grow as well. But I would say that's just the fundamentals, and that's the foundation that's being established, and that is accessible to all.
Absolutely love that. And you're absolutely right. It's if the support is out there, that's excellent, but it's not going to get utilized unless people know about it, and it's not going to get utilized if they don't have the access to it. So I think that this is awesome, and I love that it's something that y'all are considering kind of in multiple phases or multiple areas within the org. Very, very cool. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left before we run out of time today. But let's talk about any of our listeners who want to integrate DEIB into their daily lives. Let's talk about what that could look like for them.
I think the first step is listening. If you're really trying to put in a new strategy or you want to evolve your current practices, start off with some listening sessions. Really get to understand how people are thinking about inclusion, how people are thinking about, do they feel a sense of belonging with the organization? So you have any organization has a great population to really speak to and hear their feedback. So one is to listen. Two is, really when you do these listening sessions, really sit back and seek to understand what individuals are saying. I think sometimes you have to ask multiple questions to really get the full context of the message the person's trying to say or a group's trying to say. Really seek to understand. The other thing is we talked about bias, right? Check your biases, right? We all have them. So make sure that those biases are not negatively impacting a decision that you're going to make. And I think the other thing too is just be open and honest, right? There's this transparency of, you're not going to know all the answers. You're not going to be able to put everything in place and magically change something tomorrow. It is a journey. And I think that just framing it as this is a journey, we want to improve because we believe fundamentally diversity of thought, the ability to drive faster innovation and more innovation is really fundamental to the growth of business, because the business grows, you're growing. I mean, you just have to really, it is multifaceted, but it's also a dialogue that you continue to have.
No, absolutely. I love the idea of this being a continued dialogue, because let's be real, no matter where you are in your journey along along this subject matter line, nobody's perfect, right? Truly. I mean, even Power to Fly, like we help people, but we are absolutely still on this journey ourselves. We all are, and we're all going to be for quite a long time, unfortunately, because this all seems to be very tough to root out. So I think it is really awesome to think of it in terms of a marathon, not a sprint. It's not a contest though, right? It's not like oh, we're doing better than you, so we're fine. It's like, no. We're all just continuously moving along this journey. And I think it really does highlight that your efforts are not all going to look like one thing, right? You're going to have to kind of look around and see the multiple areas in your life where this could be an issue that you could work on. So I think that's wonderful. Okay, Sue, our last question that I have for you, a bit of a selfish question. But as we're talking about this subject, is there any question we haven't gotten to or any area that people never ask you about, but you really think they should?
That's a great question. I think it's kind of back to my last answer. This is a journey and it's a partnership. It truly is a partnership. And I believe a lot of times the questions are always like, what can you do for me? So the question I don't get asked is, how can I help? A lot of times, right? And and it is a partnership, and it is every individual can add to this journey. And so the question of how can I help is a big one, because that partnership, the leaning in, the continuous conversation is so critically important. This is a journey. It doesn't magically change over time. But I would say, how can I help is probably one of those questions that should be asked more.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sue. It has been wonderful to get to know you and learn from you for the last 30 minutes. Very, very excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. We really, really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you very much. Great meeting you, Meg. It was
Thank
wonderful.